Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you tonight. A lot of medical information with Dr. Uma Dhanabalan. And Dr. Dhanabalan is a cannabis doctor, and you'll hear more about that. So stay tuned for that. But first, we will bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Okay, so if you are a loved one or looking for help finding a doctor who can help you with medical marijuana, give us a call. We have a referral to doctors all over the country, including this doctor who you'll be seeing in the interview in a moment. But you can call us at 503 235 4606. That's 503 235 4606. Without further ado, we're going to our interview and keep working to restore hemp. Good night. I would like to welcome Dr. Uma Dhanabalan to the show. Dr. Uma Dhanabalan is the head of a clinic in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Uplifting Health and Wellness. And I want to welcome you to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Paul. What a pleasure to be here today.
I had been wanting to get you on a few months back, but things didn't work out. So I'm glad we finally got you on the show. We met at the Boston Freedom Rally last year for the first time. And you are a physician, MD, who is working with medical marijuana. And what are some other areas of specialty for you?
I like to, first of all, we'll call it medical cannabis. And my background is actually, I did research from probably about the age of 11, muddling around in hospitals and laboratories. So I've been involved in healthcare for about 50 years now. And I'm officially trained in as a physician. I went to New Jersey Medical School in Newark, New Jersey. And then I did my first life as a resident at MUSC and did my residency in family medicine. And then I got involved, really, my curiosity, which is one of my foundations of who I am, led me to do my second residency in occupational environmental medicine, which is actually a subspecialty of preventative medicine. And in order to do that residency, I did my master's in public health. So after I did my residency at MUSC, I spent 5 years at Harvard in Massachusetts, in Boston, Mass. And I spent doing my master's there, my residency, and I also did a fellowship in heavy metals. So that's my allopathic training of my life. And it wasn't until 2010 I even knew the word endocannabinoid system was even around, and that was because of my mom. And I started getting involved in being an advocate in 2012 and writing recommendations for patients since then. And so I consider myself a family doctor, an occupational environmental medicine physician, and a cannabinoid medicine specialist.
Great. So you say you found out about the endocannabinoid system because of your mother. That sounds like an interesting connection.
It is. It's one of those sweet sorrow stories because my mom was dying of an illness known as idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. It's fancy term for we don't know what caused your lung disease. Idiopathic means no known cause, pulmonary, lungs, and fibrosis is where the lungs are not moving. and you're unable to breathe and you die because you can't breathe. And people usually die of two main reasons. Either our heart stops beating, cardiac arrest, or we can't breathe, and pulmonary respiratory depression, as we say. So either cardiac arrest or pulmonary depression, respiratory depression. And so my mom was visiting me in the state of Washington. My parents were living part of the time at that point in 2010 in the United States, and then part of the time in India. And
So when
we've
you
been
say
in the United
Washington,
States.
do
Huh?
you mean Washington, D.C. or Washington State?
Washington State. And I'm glad you
Okay.
specified that because I was working there with my background. I was working for the world's largest cleanup site for plutonium. Okay.
Oh, Hanford.
Hanford, hey, you know it. So
I
a
do.
lot of people don't know about Hanford, and many people have heard about the Manhattan Project and movies about it. And this is where I was working with my background. I was working for the federal government, and I was seeing patients that worked there, employees. I was doing surveillance exams, and also my background is also I'm a medical review officer. So as a medical review officer, I'm involved with drug testing. And so drug testing means if anybody's ever had to pee in a cup or had hair testing done or blood testing done, and they tested positive for a chemical, they might have gotten a call from a medical review officer that would have said, "Hi, I'm so and so, and I'm a medical review officer, and you just partaked in a drug test, and I'm calling because you tested positive for X, Y, and Z." So here I was working at the site with all my degrees, including Harvard, and my mother sees a TV program, and I could still hear her saying, "Paul, they're using ganja." I daggone well knew what that word was.
Yeah.
And I beelined it into the bedroom, and it was a TV program about how cannabis was being used in Israel for COPD, asthma, lung cancer, and PTSD, and did not compute. All
Right.
my life, we told people not to smoke. And here it was, they were showing people in clinics and hospitals where they were smoking cannabis, consuming it, and treating all these illnesses. And I just was like taken back. And I've always been very, very curious from the time I've been 3 years young. They didn't know what to do with me, and they sent me off to school at 3. So I started to learn, but I'm working as a role of a medical doctor, drug testing people, and cannabis is illegal. And in Schedule 1, I kept my mouth shut. I didn't say anything. I didn't talk about it. I read about it, learned about it, and I never used it for my mother. And
You regret that now?
I not only regretted it, I've come to terms with the fact I did the best knowing what I could, and now I'm making peace with it by being outspoken and not holding back in any way. And I have no regrets, Paul. I decided to leave the system after my mother died, and it was a fortunate thing because there was all the Obama cuts at that time. And so I decided I suffered with my own, and I'd like to call it just PTS. I don't like to refer to the D as a disorder or disease. And I just say it's PTS. For veterans, for anybody, it's post-traumatic stress. I ain't a disease and we ain't disorders. It's something that actually happened. And so I started to advocate and also left the system as far as I didn't work for a hospital, I didn't work for any universities, and decided not to take a dime from the insurance companies. And I met a gentleman in Tacoma that gave me the opportunity, who's passed away, God rest his soul, gave me the opportunity to start seeing patients. And I started seeing patients virtually in Olympia, Silverdale, Tacoma, and Seattle. So I was covering 4 locations, sitting in the Tri-Cities and seeing patients like this. And then I would go in sometimes to the locations as well. And I started to certify patients, and the patients taught me.
Right.
And I have no regrets about what I've done. And I just wish that we can get the whole world to understand what this is about. And I want to make it very clear, cannabis is not the panacea for everybody. And one of my blatant disclosures is cannabis is not for everybody, yet it should be a first line option and not the last resort. I mean, by the time most patients get to me, they've had orifices created in them. They've gone through so many procedures. They've gone through failed drug trials. They've gone through almost death of suicidal ideations and near procedures from side effects of medications that are given for treatment, procedures that are given for treatment. And I dedicated my life, and my mission has been to change the stigma regarding cannabis and for everybody in the world to know that we have an endocannabinoid system. And I do it through education.
Great, great. I don't know if you know that I operated clinics around Washington State as well, probably concurrently, THCF medical clinics. You probably do know that. You go
Yeah,
to Tri-Cities and had offices in Bellevue and Spokane. We still see Washington patients here in Portland.
I still have my Washington license. I'm
Oh,
just renewing it now, and it's like I'm considered a retired physician, but I still I have licenses to practice in Washington, Massachusetts, Maine, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Georgia. So, and then some states allow reciprocity, so I can write for Rhode Island and Vermont for their recommendations. But I consult patients all over the world. I'm considered a so-called expert in my field, so I can consult for patients. And now my youngest patient is a 1 month old, and my eldest is a 98-year-old. So I
wow.
truly get to practice family medicine.
We have run into issues with our doctors where the medical board in Oregon has not allowed doctors to see pediatric patients without incredible in-office follow-up. And so we've actually had a few doctors who've lost their license. And that's against the law in Oregon. Oregon says that doctors who help medical marijuana patients are not primary care physicians, but it's really unfortunate, and it scared a lot of doctors off. We help many pediatric patients across the country, and now our doctors are afraid to see pediatric patients. So we're limiting it to people 18 or over. We had one patient in just last month who he came in on his 18th birthday. But if he was one day younger, our doctors were afraid that they would be censored for that. So,
You
and
bring
we
up a very, very, we could have a whole conversation around children and cannabis. And I feel like in Massachusetts, every state is different, like as you know. In Massachusetts, you need 2 signatures. So they have to have a pediatrician and another doctor to do it. So I worked with different doctors, and I still work with other doctors. And then I follow up my pediatric patients every 6 months. But I feel practice of care we should be following our patients up. You
yeah,
can't just give a card and say, see you in a year. And some of the stuff that they do with the certification, I think is just outright malpractice. I mean, a person that has never had a rapport certifies and then sees them for 10 minutes and they get a card. There's no education, there's nothing. I spend 45 minutes, and I'm a diplomat in cannabinoid medicine, certified through the American Academy of Cannabinoid Medicine, where I take that very seriously. And I take it as, if I were to see a new patient and I said, you have diabetes and here's your medication, I don't say, well, I'll see you in a year with no education about anything. But that's how and I look at cannabinoid medicine as a specialty. I feel you need to understand because doctors don't even know what the endocannabinoid system is. They don't understand that cannabis is not the same for everybody. And it's not dose dependent on your size. It's not dependent on your condition. The way I look at cannabis, it's a tool that we give patients to say you're legally allowed to use it. And it's like if if two patients walk in through the door with me and both have an ankle sprain and both did it the same way, and I examine them and I say, okay, one person has insurance and one doesn't, right? And the common doctor is going to say, you need ibuprofen. So here's your 600 milligram tablet that they write on a prescription pad, and the patient goes and gets it filled and gets it covered with their insurance versus Joe that doesn't have insurance, but has a pharmacy that he can go to and get the same daggone ibuprofen in 200 milligram tablets and take 3 of them. Both patients are going to have the same side effects, which is gut rot, kidney issues, and the side effects, take it with food, don't, take it on an empty stomach. And these can have long-term. So it's just the axis of what we're treating the patient with. That's how I look at it. But you still got to tell people the side effects and the cautions that you have to take, and people have to be notified. And I do believe you need follow-up. You need guidance. And the way I look at the endocannabinoid system is that it's a network. It connects all of these so-called 11 other systems that doctors know about, your pulmonary system, your endocrinal, and each system is connected with this network of the endocannabinoid system. And that's why cannabis is being used for so many different conditions.
Mm-hmm. You want to describe how many different conditions that cannabis works with and how the endocannabinoid system is kind of a retrograde system. It runs opposite of normal, all the other neurotransmitters, which means it kind of modulates all of those, which explains its wide usage across so many different conditions to some degree.
Absolutely. So I keep talking about a system, a network, right? So I look at the nervous system. We have nerves throughout our whole body that connect different ways. And usually we have a system where we say a presynaptic to a postsynaptic. So my analogy is a pitcher and a catcher. So the pitcher throws the ball, the catcher catches it. The pitcher throws the ball, the catcher catches it. And so when we have a system, so we'll use examples. So we all have heard about this wonderful neurotransmitter called dopamine. So dopamine, serotonin, these are neurotransmitters. They're released and they bind to the postsynaptic. They're made in the pre and they're attached to the post. The endocannabinoid system, its function is to bring about balance. The way I look at it is it keeps you at ease. Mm-hmm. If you're not at ease, we are at dis-ease.
Yeah.
Dis-ease. And we in the medical profession come up with fancy terms. We give it ICD-9 codes and we call it an itis, gastritis, appendicitis, carditis. It's some itis. So this function of trying to keep it at ease, what's unique is that we have what's known as endocannabinoids. The first endocannabinoid that was discovered by Dr. Raphael Mechoulam, anandamide, which is found in breast milk. The same molecule that's in breast milk is what THC mimics. That's why the cannabis plant mimics what our natural body makes. So the endocannabinoids are not made in the presynaptic, they're made in the postsynaptic, and they're released on demand. So if there's too much dopamine, what happens? We have the endocannabinoids releasing, hello, let's stop that or increase it. It's regulating what it needs. So it's retrograde. You mentioned the word retrograde. So when we say it goes from the presynaptic to the postsynaptic, that's antegrade. Retrograde means it's opposite. It's opposite. So it's going in the opposite direction and it's bringing about an ease. So that's how I explain the endocannabinoid system is that it's made in the postsynaptic, released, it binds to the presynaptic, and it brings about balance. And what balance is for you may be different from me. What your balance was in the morning might be different for you in the evening. So everybody's a little different throughout the day. And I look at it as a cup phenomena. If my cup today is this big, that's what I got right here that I need to fill. If tomorrow my cup is smaller, maybe that's all I need today. So understanding cannabinoids is not a dose phenomenon. And that's why Dr. Uma uses the word titrate, a little bit at a time. If it's one drop, if it's one puff, if it's one bite, if it's one whatever, it may be different. And you can adjust it depending on what your needs are. And this is very different than how medical doctors were taught, because the way I look at medicine today, I call it the triple D. You go to a healthcare physician, you give them your symptoms, they come up with a diagnosis, to come up with a code. That code then tells you what drug, based on your insurance, that they're going to give you. That drug has a dose. So it's the triple D. Make a diagnosis, give a drug, give a dose. If you get a new side effect, you make a new diagnosis, new drug, new dose.
I see. So, I think the broadest category of medical cannabis patients is, of course, chronic pain. Do you want to tell our audience how cannabis affects chronic pain and chronic pain patients? Neuropathic.
Sure. So let's define what chronic pain is. So if you think of acute pain, if somebody has an injury, okay, and it resolves, if that injury persists and the pain persists over 3 months, we consider that as chronic. Okay, so that's when we consider it as chronic pain, something that has not resolved in 3 months. And a lot of people have chronic pain due to multiple conditions. They can have chronic pain because they've got a inflammatory condition because they had a trauma, they fell, they had an injury, or they can have an autoimmune disease. Okay, diabetes can be an autoimmune disease. Thyroid can be lupus, MS, all of these different things are autoimmune. Rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune. We are looking at these different dysfunctions, and I like to use the word dis-ease. When we're not at ease, we're at dis-ease, and I want people to understand that. Everybody's ease is different. So chronic pain can come because of trauma. It can come because of illnesses. It can also come because of wear and tear. Somebody, Joe, that's been swinging a hammer for 20 years, his shoulder hurts, his fingers hurt, his fingers have been gripping, his wrist hurts, his elbow hurts, his neck hurts, his back hurts, he's been lugging things. All of these things can have wear and tear, and that can cause pain. So pain is either treated with usually over-the-counter meds initially. I mentioned ibuprofen. They can take acetaminophen, Tylenol. They can take rubs. They can take other things. They can take different things that they can get over the counter, or, like I said, they go to a healthcare provider. They can be prescribed different medications, different levels of medications. They can be prescribed anti-inflammatories. They can be prescribed benzodiazepines because somebody now can't sleep because they're in pain. Then they can't think because they're in pain. Then they get constipated because they've taken their pain medications. Then they got gut problems, or they get nauseous, or they can have other side effects. I was just at a 710 event and a veteran spoke about how she was given gabapentin and then she got drug-induced lupus, an anti-inflammatory
From the gabapentin.
a disease from taking the gabapentin. She developed an illness from taking something that she was treating for chronic pain. And this is where I'm very leery of our medications that have only been around for 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. But cannabis has been around for thousands of years. And I can say that based on what we know, nobody has ever overdosed for cannabis consumption. Now, having said that, I'm concerned of what we've done to the medicine now with the contamination. What they do is remediating it. If it gets mold on it, they process it, they put it to another product, and it goes to the shelf and it's given to patients.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm hoping I answered your condition. So chronic pain can come from multiple conditions. It can be from trauma, it can be from wear and tear, it can be from autoimmune diseases, it could be from mental health issues also. And people have suffered trauma. That's chronic pain. Okay. And chronic pain also gives you mental health problems. So it's a domino effect. If you can't go to work, if you can't have a lifestyle, if you're financially impacted, if you can't spend time with your children or your spouse, if you can't have a sexual activity with your significant other, or it's so many other factors that impact. So my whole thing is, what can we do that's safe and with knowledge, education, research, and also being able to improve one's quality of life.
Mhm.
And cannabis is definitely a solution.
So it affects so many different things. What do you think about its anti-tumor effect and its use for cancer? Do you want to describe that a little bit for our audience?
Absolutely. So I've worked with cancer and cancer cell lines from probably back in the 80s. And we were involved with head and neck patients. And we used to get tumors from head and neck patients from different parts, brain tumors. And we would put them, I did actually projects where we would have mice. So a mouse is about so big. And we would take mice and and the kidney of a mouse is half an inch.
Okay.
And in that, I would implant tumors that were 1 millimeter tumors inside the kidney capsules of a mouse. I would sedate them, put a small hole inside the kidney, pop out the kidney out, put this tumor in it, close it back up, and treat them with different chemotherapy drugs back in the days. And we would treat the animals with 10 days for the chemotherapy drug. I would see all the side effects of the different chemotherapy, the same drugs that we use today, cisplatin, methotrexate, 5-FU, methotrexate, vincristine, vinblastine, same drugs that we are using. And so pretty much for cancer, what we have for treatment is chemotherapy, radiation, immunotherapy, antibiotics, steroids, and surgery. That's pretty much the classification. Now, cannabis works in a different modality. And these modalities just don't target just the cancer cell. It targets everything. And that's why when I used to see the side effects, the nausea, the weariness, the diarrhea, the hair loss, the fatigue, all of these things are side effects that we see in our patients that take these drugs. Now, cannabis works in a very unique way, and there's patent numbers that are out there, and I'll give those patent numbers to you that we should be aware of, that patients should know to look up. The government owns patents for cannabinoids for cancer treatment. And what we know is that cannabis works because of these receptors. The cancer cells have these particular receptors, and cannabinoids can attach to those particular cancer cells and not the healthy cells, and say, right here is the cancer cell. These are not the healthy cells. So we're going to target this. And there's 4 very specific properties, and I want to go over them with you.
Please.
One is not letting the cancer cells multiply. Anti-proliferation. Don't let the cancer cells spread. Anti-metastatic. Blood supply. These cancer cells are well supplied with blood supply. So cut it off. Anti-agenesis, cut off the blood supply. And another thing that we call cell death. Cancer cell, you got to die. Apoptosis. So 4 very specific mechanisms that are well documented: anti-proliferation, anti-metastatic, anti-agenesis, and apoptosis. Fancy terms for don't let it spread, don't let it multiply, cut off the blood supply, and call cell death.
And so cannabis helps those processes that without affecting the other cells and causing hair loss and all the other things associated with chemotherapy.
And also what's important to understand is that this is something they don't tell you. People that get treated with chemotherapy are predisposed for other cancers. Our children that get these intense cancer treatments and radiation treatments and complications of radiation, everything has a side effect, okay? And what I want people to understand is if they can start the cannabis treatment before they start any of these other treatments, it actually can protect them from the damages, because once you've had the chemotherapy and the radiation, the cannabis has to overcome the damage that's been done.
What's the best way to treat with cannabis? I think, a lot of people find that smoking isn't enough and that they're using these oils. This is the full extract cannabis oils, first popularized by the Canadian Rick Simpson, and so it's also called Rick Simpson oil. So it's got those two names. You got RSO and you got FICO, but it's the same thing.
It is, and it could be processed differently. I want people to understand. Rick Simpson did a lot of butanes and different types of things, but a lot of people are making it simply with alcohol extractions now that can be made. And FICO, which the acronym stands for full extract cannabis oil, and this is what I truly believe in. And I tell people, if you've got cancer, start today and just keep increasing and keep doubling down till what you can get to manage it, to what you could tolerate, because we want the cancer cells to die and build up your own immunity. Because what happens when we go through chemotherapy is also your own immune system is getting knocked out. So it's having to overcome those as well. And when we think of cannabis, I don't think of it just the oils. I think about the food. Hemp is protein. It's very easily digestible. So I tell people, incorporate the foods, get your nutritional system up, so that the gut is where 50% of our dopamine is made in our gut. 80 to 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut. So when they say you are what you eat, it's a lot of truth to that, because when we think about what caused this cancer, what was the cause? Was it something that we were exposed to? Was it something that we got over time? Was it a genetic thing? Was it a combination? Or was it just a freak of luck that you got this cancer? So I call it the G effect. I think there is some genetic predisposition. There's definitely an environmental predisposition. And I believe there's an emotional trigger. Why is it two people that have the same genes were brought up in the same environment, but one develops cancer because of that exposure and one does not? I think there's emotional triggers. Why is it that people don't get cancers? And these are things that are very curious to me. And this is where I feel that cannabis can be used as an adjunct treatment with any type of treatment. It's not an all or none. It's not that, well, I use this, that I can't use that. You can use cannabis as a adjunct therapy. You can use it alone. You could use it, in different ways. And we could talk about delivery mechanisms as well.
Well, why don't we talk about those delivery mechanisms? I mean, there's eating it. Most people, when they're using the FICO, they're taking it orally, right? You can't really smoke that.
Well, it's really interesting because what I tell my patients to do is, you're right. Some patients will be like, Dr. Ma, I'm not going to smoke it. I'm not going to get high. I'm not doing it. I respect them. but it's really interesting. My seniors will say, I'm not going to smoke it, but then they'll come back in for their checkup in 3 months. When I call them, they go, I got me a little pipe. So they're doing it. They want to experiment. So I call it, what I call it is the do me graph. Okay. So I tell people draw a plus sign, okay, on a piece of paper. And I want people to label the horizontal line as duration and the vertical line as onset. Quick onset, later onset, short duration, long duration. And in the left upper corner, what we want to put in is S. And in the right lower corner, put the letter E. So S stands for anything smoking, sublingual, suppositories, any type of smoke, if it's through vaporization, it's going to have a quick onset, but short duration. So along the S, I tell people to put the letters, 3 letters, BBB. What do I mean by that? If you get it into the bloodstream, either by smoking or sublingually or through a suppository, you're going to feel it in the brain and throughout the whole body because it gets in the bloodstream. Bloodstream, brain, body. Now, in the right lower corner is the letter E. Eating it, like you mentioned, has to go through a system. You got to chew it, you got to swallow it. It goes through this beautiful digestive system, and it goes through the organ known as our liver. So I call it LLL. Liver, later, longer. Why? Depending on your liver or my liver, or if it's morning, afternoon, or evening, our liver is going through different things. What is it metabolizing? Is there been food on board? Is there other medications on board? Is there alcohol on board? Has there been damage to the liver? Depending on your liver, edibles get metabolized differently. So I have some patients that say, I can't take it. It does nothing for me. I can take as much as I want. It does nothing for me. It doesn't work for me. Then there's other patients like my smaller patients that you think small amounts is all they need. No, they need large doses for the cannabis and they can tolerate large doses. So it depends on the individual and what they can tolerate and what they can build up to. So with FECO, what I usually do, depending on the patient, I'll tell them, put it on parchment paper. Make rice-sized grains of drops or half a rice grain drops of the FECO. Put it on parchment paper. Freeze it. Do you remember back in the days you'd have to peel the dots with the different candies on the strips that they would cut? They could just peel that and you can put it in a blueberry or just under the tongue. Or you can take glycerin suppositories, cut them in half, make a little hole, put it in that and insert.
So when it's a suppository, it bypasses the liver, doesn't it?
Very good question. So there's a pectinate line, okay? And this pectinate line in the rectum actually is very fascinating because this is where when we talk about hemorrhoids, people will talk about hemorrhoids that bleed. Both of them bleed. Internal and external hemorrhoids bleed, but internal hemorrhoids bleed, but they're not painful. Internal. External hemorrhoids bleed, but they're painful. So this line separates it. Once it goes beyond that line and it pushes up, then it can go metabolized through the liver, but that's what it is. It bypasses the liver instead of going from mouth down.
Do you think that's useful for some forms of cancer?
You know, let me tell you, when you have babies and people that have nausea and vomiting and seizing and can't take anything by mouth, and I'm not talking trauma, I'm talking a teeny tip that we insert and it absorbs quickly. It is definitely an option. And Dr. Uma has a very simple philosophy. If you got an orifice, she's going to use it, you know, and all orifices are game. You know, we use our ears for tinctures when we have ear pain. We use our nose. We use drops in our eyes. We put things in our mouth. The belly button is another one of my favorites. It's called the Picotti method. My grandmother used it. My great-grandmother used it to put tinctures in, infuse it, absorption, the vaginal opening, the rectal opening. And the largest organ system, our skin, dermal absorption.
Yes. I collect antique medical marijuana containers, and I've passed a lot of them on to Don Wirtschafter in his Cannabis Museum in Ohio, but I still have some. Some of the most interesting ones are from Johnson and Johnson. They have a cannabinoid mixed with salicylic acid or aspirin as a topical. And
Exactly.
so,
These things still, I tell my patients, look, don't ever throw away your tinctures. If you've got tinctures that you don't want to use, don't throw it away. Take it, mix it with some coconut oil, and use it for your skin. You can mix it with icy hot or Bengay or any of these things that penetrate through and can get into the skin. Also, you can rub it on the soles of your feet, on the palms of your hands, the back of your neck here. These are all different points that we can absorb it. Right along the spinal column for my patients that have bone cancer, it absorbs through, it relieves pain. If I can have them take one less pill and be up a little bit more, one less constipation episode, and improve their quality of life, that's what it's about.
tinctures can be made oil-based and alcohol-based, and taking the alcohol-based ones can be a little strong for some patients, and they don't like the burning associated with alcohol. But in a bath situation, if you put a alcohol-based tincture into a hot bath or a warm bath, then it can absorb through your whole body. Where an oil-based tincture might mess up your bathtub, with the oil residue. But
You bring up a really good point. So Epsom salts, I always tell patients, you can take your Epsom salts, infuse those, put it in your foot soaks, put the tincture right with that, add it right in there, and you're absorbing it. And I call cannabis the exit drug because we've always thought of it as the gateway drug. And I just wanted to get away and people to question, why does Dr. Emma call it the exit drug? Because number one, I haven't used an opioid prescription in over 30 years for my patients. And since cannabis has been around, I don't need to even consider, I'm trying to get people off of that and say, here's another option for you, a much safer option. And the addiction is less. And I wanted to bring up that word in a minute also, but because cannabis can be used, like I said, in so many different ways and in different modalities and for different people, for that people can use different forms of the cannabis. You can use more CBD based. It doesn't have to be all THC focused, There's different types. And I want to talk a little bit about the fact that cannabis belongs to the plant kingdom. It belongs to the family of Cannabaceae. The genus was identified as Cannabis sativa. There's 3 species that we talk about: Cannabis sativa, Cannabis indica, and Cannabis rhodalis. 2 well studied are sativa and indica. A mixture of the 2 is called the hybrid. So when patients go into the store, this is how the terminology might be: sativa, indica, hybrid. What does it mean? Hybrid is a mixture. Sativa, I think of S for sunshine. So I think of it, sativa, as a more uplifting daylight use. Indica, I think of insomnia. When do you get insomnia? At nighttime. So it's more, my students used to say, Dr. Indica is for in the couch. When you want to be locked in the couch, that's what you got to go to. So we don't want people in couch lock either. During the middle of the day, my patients may use a hybrid so that they can kind of get eased into the later part of the days. Addiction. People say, can you get addicted to cannabis? I think you could get addicted to anything. If you've got an addictive personality, addictive things, you can. And so it's about 10% to 9 to 10%. But I think it's more addicting because if it's a habituality, and it's sort of like learning to exercise. If you start learning to lift 5 pounds and you go to 10 pounds, you start learning to build a higher weight. So your tolerance builds up. So the easiest way for that is take a break.
Yeah.
You're not going to die. You're not going to go through, you may go through a little bit of withdrawals, like you get a little anxious, a little,
It's not like opiate withdrawals though,
oh no, you're not going to die from it.
Yeah, I back to my collection of these antique medical bottles from Eli Lilly and Park Davis. They say on the side of the bottle, there's some crazy things in there about women and things like that. But they also say that they're for habituates of opiates and chloroform and cocaine and for delirium tremens. So it's been an exit drug since prehistoric times.
Exactly. And my dad actually worked for Park Davis.
Oh, wow.
My dad was a chemical engineer, and I really miss my parents, but they really got me to see so many things because my dad worked for Park Davis and Helene Curtis, and he always smelled so good, and we would talk about terpenes and how, you know, all these things have been around a long time. And you're right, it was used for opioid addiction, not the cause of opioid addiction, the treatment for these addiction. It was treatment for insanity. It was treatment for labor pains. It was treatment for so many other things. Parkinson's, tetanus, all these things that we are now learning to use it for. They knew about it. William O'Shaughnessy. I'm originally from India. William O'Shaughnessy in 1833 went to India, to Calcutta, and learned from the Ayurvedic doctors. He wrote hundreds of papers, documented his experience, what he saw, what they used it for, the tinctures, the different ways they made it, even the inhalations, to see how this was treatment for patients. And he brought that knowledge to Europe and then to the United States. And so this is nothing new. I just feel the demonization and not the proper information, and in fact, misinformation that we've done that has demonized this plant. And so, again, I am not saying this is the answer to everything, but I definitely feel that there's a huge void in the medical community. We call these programs medical cannabis programs, is what we should be calling. I want to get away from the word marijuana because it still has that derogatory terminology and things associated with it. It's cannabis, it's cannabinoid medicine. There's a system that it works with. This is science. This is research done all over the world. We have so much information. President Trump is moving it to Schedule 3, which means that we're going to say that it's not Schedule 1, because Schedule 1 meant that there was no medical use, no medical research, or potential for abuse. And we know abuse can happen with anything, but there is medical research and there is medical information that we know about it and that it's being used for. And now maybe we could do more research and that it will be covered with the insurance companies and hopefully a step in the right direction. But Jack Herer said that cannabis was food, fuel, fiber, paper, and medicine. And he wrote about this. Dr. Uma says it's for the 5 Ps. This plant is for people. It should be for people as a first line option and not the last resort. It should be for our pets and our produce, the animals that we eat and our pets that we have. If our chickens were fed hemp, if the cows were fed hemp, the pork, all of these animals, we would be consuming better produce. If we planted this plant, our air, the soil, everything, our water would be better. Peace, if we stop putting people in prison for cannabis possession, the money that we spend and the prisons that are making their money. It's a private industry, folks. Prisons are a private industry. People are making money from putting these people in prison. And they should not be having people in prison for possession. And also prevention, and that's profit. If we can save our health, that's our wealth. So profit, prevention, but this is about the plant. People, pets, produce, planet, peace, and prevention.
So if someone's interested in reaching out to you, Dr. Uma, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can email us at upliftinghealthandwellness@gmail.com. They can call us 508-444-2324, We will get back to you. I see patients of all ages. I could do consults for patients anywhere in the world. If you'd like a certification in Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Georgia, or Washington, I can do the certifications as well. But I'm here for you, not just for cannabinoid medicine. It's about preventative health. I also help people that want to understand what this means, reviewing their blood work, getting them connected with other right people. So I have a small concierge practice too. We don't deal with insurance, but we take HSA and FSA and we do a sliding scale so everybody can be, it's affordable.
That's great. That's great. So let's talk a little bit more about another aspect of cannabis, and that's its anti-seizure properties and effects on the neurosystem. Do you want to expand on that?
Absolutely. So when we talk about the nervous system, so I want to explain that when we're not at ease, we're at disease. So in the words of Dr. Damaso, it helps us to relax, eat, sleep, forget, and protect. So when I take these 5 words and I think about the word relax, I think about seizures, because if your muscles are constantly twitching in a case of a seizure, or if they don't move like in ALS, that's that's a problem too. If you eat too much, you have obesity. If you don't eat enough, you have anorexia. If you sleep too much, you have depression. If you don't sleep enough, you have PTS. If you forget too much, you have dementia. If you don't forget enough, I'm sorry, it's PTS. If you relax, let me go over this again. Relax, eat, sleep, forget, and protect. So relaxing, too much twitching or under twitching, eating too much or under eating, sleeping too much or not sleeping enough, forgetting too much, dementia, or not forgetting enough. Protection, if you're overprotection, autoimmune diseases. If you don't protect enough, you're immunocompromised. So this is the balance. So seizures is along those lines. And when you think about Parkinson's, another one with tremors, and these are immediate things. When you have patients that are seizing, and if you could get a sublingual or a suppository into them, or the Parkinson patient that walks in and they could get one puff in them, and you see everything calm down. And now we've had medications that are been available now with like Epidiolex that has been around, Sativex, which has been around in different forms in different places in the world that are prescribable and available. Marinol, which is another medication that's a pure synthetic THC product. But again, the synthetics, too much of them, you can overdose, but from the plant, you cannot. And again, it depends on contamination. But for seizures, I cannot tell you. I have patients that will tell you this has been a game changer, not just for the patient, for the families, for their siblings. I had a patient the other day, they said, we can go places. The seizures have decreased to hardly anything. And when they do happen, it's much less intensive. We can go out for hours, we can plan things. And I look at it for 3 key words: prevention, maintenance, and treatment. How do we know how to use it for prevention? How do we use it for maintenance? And how do we use it for treatment?
I see. So another common condition is gastrointestinal ailments and how it affects the gut. Do you want to touch on that briefly? We've got about 5 minutes left or so.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the gut motility, okay? If you have too much motility or too little motility. If you have too much, everything's running through. If there's not enough motility, you have constipation. So think of this condition, the symptoms, and what patients. So we have patients with IBS, IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel disease, and these conditions can become where it can predispose some of these people to cancers, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. These are patients with autoimmune conditions that are sometimes related to genetic disorders, sometimes related to exposures to different chemicals, or even from cancer treatments, people can get different gut disorders. So when you have somebody where their gut has been destroyed or irritated from if they've had an infection and their gut just has to reset. I just had food poisoning a few weeks back, and I realized it's still taking me a few weeks for my gut to reestablish the flora. And believe it or not, in the United States, we probably have the least amount of blood flora variability. What do I mean by that? We need more bacteria. We
Mhm.
need good bacteria in our gut. We keep getting rid of them. Every time you treat with antibiotics, you're getting rid of the good flora and not replenishing it back. And this is where cannabis, again, hemp, reinstituting these things that can help us to reinstill these gut flora is very, very important. It's a balance again. It's where do I need to keep myself at ease? Dr. Uma has some basic things what we want to make sure people are always aware of. So number one, I don't use the word dose. I use the word titrate because every time you get a product, we don't know if it's going to be the same as what you got it the last time. So understanding titrate a little bit at a time, whatever you're going to try. 3 rules. Rule number 1, hydrate before you medicate. Hydrate before, during, and after. Cannabis it's a dehydrant. That's why people get anxious. A lot of people are just basically dehydrated. If they just hydrated better every day, they would not have less anxiety and less of those concerns. Heart conditions, all of them, hydration is really important. If you're going to use cannabis, you've got to be hydrated. If not, your mouth is going to get dry, everything, and it's going to put you in a panic state. Hydrate. Second thing, it causes your blood sugar to drop. So please make sure you have food on board because this is why everybody talks about the munchies. But this is why I have patients that come into me obese and I can help them lose weight. People that are anorexic that we can help them gain weight, get them to their sweet spot. So make sure you eat before you use the cannabis so you're not munching on stupid stuff and bad stuff. Eat. Third and most important, journal. This is about you. So remember, Dr. Uma's name starts with a U. So is your you a little you today or is it a big you? So remember, it's a U curve. Too much, too little. Find your sweet spot.
All right. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you think we should close on here in the last
I
few
want
minutes we have?
everybody to go home and learn about the endocannabinoid system and go ask your doctor, what do you know about the ECS?
Right. And it's time to learn. They don't. They
So
don't
3
teach me
words we
that in
use for
medicine.
hashtag is educate, embrace, empower. So if you learned something today, hashtag educate, embrace, empower.
All right. Well, I like that name. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Doctor. Again, if someone wants to contact you, you want to put your contact information in here one more time?
Absolutely. I'm Dr. Uma Dhanabalan. My clinic is Uplifting Health and Wellness. You could contact us at Uplifting Health and spelled out wellness at gmail.com. And our phone number is 508-444-2324.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Dr. Uma. I hope
Thank
to
you
see
so
you
much,
out
Paul. Thank you for
there.
all your hard work. And Will,
Pleasure.
thank you for being here with us and helping us do all this production work. And everybody out there, if you learned something, Dr. Uma says, reach one, teach 10, share the knowledge. Thank you very much.